Dr Kennedy Graham, 5-minute call on behalf of the Green Party.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Just to pick up where Materia Ture left off, my colleague before me, we welcome the general endorsement pretty much across all parties for the amendments to these two bills. The aim is to implement the recommendations of the Justice and Electoral Committee report on the General Election of 2014. And indeed, I think the bill, or the two bills, have something like 12 out of 28 recommendations to make, those in which it is feasible to implement before the 2017 election. And as we have said, we regard this as a natural progression in updating the electoral laws of our country. It gives us an opportunity to meet the challenges of the 21st century digital age and make sure that the election is undertaken with due efficiency and greater fairness and transparency, perhaps. And I think it's also important in this respect to recall the point that the Honourable David Parker was making earlier, to the effect that we should all carry some concern now that democracy is in danger of being degraded all around the world, and perhaps including in this country, with a decline in the enrolment and the imperfection of rolls for whatever reason, whether it is because people own fewer houses and are more itinerant, or for whatever reason, and for that matter, the use of the social media at times. So we do have to be careful about how we are proceeding, and this bill goes some way in rectifying that. The amendments to the two bills, I think, will prove very useful in 2017. The amendment to the Broadcasting Act does a variety of things. It removes the requirement to have an opening and closing address and gives more flexibility in the use of the funds to that effect. Greater use of the internet, updates the laws on the return of expenditure limits, and removes the requirement to submit returns on all the broadcasting programs during the election. The amendments to the Electoral Act will address the issue of interference in advance voting and gives greater clarity in that respect. It will update the law on the former MPs sitting or voting in Parliament, which is remarkably obsolete. And there are a number of other recommendations as well, as I say, 12 of them altogether. We find them all to be sound and constructive, and the Green Party is pleased to support the bill. Thank you.